Today I'm going to do a recap of the demonstration that we did in class to create a gradient scale in Photoshop. The purpose of creating this gradient scale in Photoshop is for us to use when we are creating the gradient scale with acrylic paint. The whole point of this is so that you can refer to this gray scale or this value scale when you are creating the value scale for your in your acrylic on Bristol board. Okay, so we're creating this so that we can use it as reference, so that we can try to match the values that we're creating in Photoshop, that we can try to match them in acrylic. So to make it a little bit easier, I created the chart in Photoshop for you. So you can just simply download this when you go to Blackboard under exercises, you'll see a folder called ValueEX1, meaning value exercise 1. And there is this Photoshop document that will start you off on creating your value scale in Photoshop. Once again, you will end up with two value scales, one in Photoshop and one acrylic. Okay? So I created the chart, but I also created the first swatch for you, which I have labeled rect shape, which stands for rectangular shape. And if I hide it, you can see the chart is underneath. Okay? We're going to use this to duplicate to create our next ones. But before I create the next ones, I want to remind you that you're going to need to go under swatches and open up the gray scale, because this is what we're going to use for those values to put on our chart. Okay. And again, I'm going to use this layer. So I've already created this layer and I put the darkest dark or the black on it. I'm going to right click and put in duplicate layer. Doing so allows me to duplicate that layer so that I can use my move tool and simply just move it over. Once I move it over, I'm going to just click on the swatch right next to the black and get my bucket tool. Your bucket tool might be under gradient. You might see gradient. You're just going to click and hold and click on the bucket tool. So right on top of the black swatch that I just moved over one, I'm going to click right on top of it so I can get the next value down as we move to white. Now, this one you may not see it on the screen, but that is in fact what I just did. I'm going to switch to my move tool now because I don't want to stay on the bucket tool and accidentally click on something else. I'm mainly going to be using the move tool and the bucket tool. Mostly throughout all of this is going to be repetitive. I'm going to right click again and duplicate that layer and hit OK. I'm going to use that move tool to move it. Here, I'm going to go over once again. Good. I just wanted to make sure it was moving along with me. And then I'm going to get my bucket tool and go right on top of it. And there you can see that it's moving. It's moving in value. I'm just going to go back one because I just want to make sure that I am getting that and I am getting the value changes. So now I'm going to right click again over that top layer and duplicate it. And once I duplicate it, I'm going to click on the next swatch over and get my bucket tool and click right on it. Should be one more over. There we go. and then get my bucket tool and click right on it. So you can see that value starting to go up. I'm going to do it again. Duplicate layer. And then I'm going to move it and get the next one over. So I'm going to skip 80% gray simply because I have more values in my grayscale than I have on my chart. And so I'm going to skip the 80% and I'm going to skip the white because you already, or that's going to come straight out of your tube. So you don't need to refer to that one. Okay. So instead of clicking this one, which is 80, I'm going to go ahead and click 75. Okay. And that's then I'm going to get the bucket tool and just put it in. Again, I'm going to right click over the layer and get the duplicate, select duplicate layer. Going to change from the 75 to the 70, swatch, move that over, get my bucket tool and click. Okay. So once again, right click, duplicate layer. Okay. With my move tool, I'm going to move that over. So I'm just moving these over because then I don't have to create a rectangle shape for all of these. I'm going to get the next level up value and go back to my bucket. So again, the reason why I'm duplicating this layer is so that I don't have to keep creating that rectangular shape, because once I have one of them, I can duplicate it. And so that, in fact, is what I'm doing. I'm just duplicating it and getting my bucket tool. I'm duplicating it, moving it, getting my bucket tool so that I can refer to it when I want to. So see how I'm moving that rectangle shape after I create it? I move it over one, I move over my value one, and I get my bucket tool again and fill in that new value so that I'm creating this whole value scale really with just that one rectangle shape that I started with, just duplicating it and changing the value. Again, I'm skipping 80% so that I get to this end, and I'm also skipping white. So there won't be white here. This gray will be there. So as I do this, I'm going to now continue. So I'm going to right click and hit duplicate layer and make sure I'm on the move tool for this. And I'm going to go up. From here, I'm going to make sure I've moved over one, get my bucket tool and click. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing. So again, this is a repetitive thing. So it should be easy, should feel easy to pick it up because you're just doing the same thing repeatedly. Get the bucket tool and just put it there. And this is a 1-to-1 scale ratio when you do this in acrylic. So again, the whole point of doing this digitally is so that you have a chart to refer to. That's the whole point of you having this, and also just kind of keep you into some of the digital making tools because we're going to need to refer to them. So to kind of keep us working on them and using them, I think is important as well. But and seeing how to work with color and value digitally. So once again, I'm just going over one and duplicating the layer. And then I move it. Make sure you switch to your move tool before you try to move it. And then I'm going to pull on that next swatch or click on that next swatch and get my bucket tool and click over. Again, duplicate layer, use your move tool to bring it over. Go ahead and click on the next swatch of the values. Go back to your bucket tool and put it there, and then use your move tool. I'm going to sort of adjust some of these because they're a little low, and I want to place them so there's not a lot of white gap there. So I'm just cleaning them up a little bit. And that's a good idea so that your work isn't sloppy. You know, we want to try to keep it neat. So there's just some little refining that we can do. I'm back up here. Again, I'm going to duplicate the layer. I'm going to use the move tool and move it over. Okay. Change the swatch. Get my bucket tool and click. Okay. I'm going to go back to the move tool and just slightly move that because I saw a little bit of white on the side. So I'm going to duplicate the layer and go ahead and move this one over. Okay. Remember, I'm changing that swatch, getting my bucket and clicking. Duplicate layer. Moving to using the move tool. And then getting that. So remember, I'm not going to end with the white because the white's out of the tube. I don't need to refer to that. But you do want to match these values when you're mixing the colors. Now, what we do know is that they're going to look slightly different when I'm just tidying that up. They're going to look slightly different, meaning your acrylic value scale is going to look slightly different because this is being done in the computer. It's a different medium entirely than acrylic, but you do want to match it up to your best ability because again, what you're trying to do is really train your eye and really also train your hands for those mixing skills and then build up your painting skills to at least be able to paint flat and even so that you can cut these up and arrange them on the Bristol board. Okay, so where you are now is you should have these. I'm going to go through as I'm talking to just sort of tighten some of these up. Because again, where I see there's a little bit of a white gap, I'm just going to sort of slightly move them to see if I can rectify that a little bit. And that's what I would do is just touch them up. You don't really want to have them have these major white spaces showing like that. Let me show you. You don't want to have stuff like that because you can easily fix that, right? You want to sort of keep it as nice as possible. And so all I'm doing is clicking on the ones where I see have a little bit of issue and just tightening them up. And so your gradients, your value scale on Photoshop should look like this. You're going to save it as a Photoshop document. You're going to label it your first and last name, and you can call it value EX1, but save it as a Photoshop document. And then you're going to upload it in the exercise submission folder that's titled Value EX1. You're going to upload this file or this document along with your finished acrylic value scale. Okay, so we've been working on these in class, so hopefully you've been following along in class, but just in case you needed some additional help, this is here for you. Okay? Do not hesitate to contact me should you need any additional support.